Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome, listeners. We're glad to have you back. And I tell you, this year is flowing right by. This third quarter is passing us by very fast. But the thing is, I've really shared with you these last 2 quarters a concept that I've been working on and I've been sharing with our listeners. And it's a 6P business owner formula. And it's about people, promotion, pricing, productivity, profit, and processes. Today, we're going to dig a little bit into that profit area, and my guest is going to help us in that area. Jesse, would you share with our guest, what problem will you help them solve today?
Keeping your books on an accrual basis as quickly and cheaply as possible. Cash versus accrual, identifying your margins, right? Spreading large cash events across the profit and loss statement to the correct months.
And we all like profit, so you need to stick around because you're going to learn something on how you can increase that in your business and how important that is with it being now third quarter. We've got half of the year's up, but there's still time to make changes that you need to. So today, after growing up in Houston, Jesse Rubenfeld began his career in New York City at the Lime Group of companies, doing the books for a variety of companies, gaining experience with nonprofit, software industry, hedge fund, and management company accounting. After serving as LimeWire CFO for his last 4 years there, he joined the D.E. Shaw Group as the controller of a research division that builds supercomputers to revolutionize drug discovery. From the beginning, Jesse's interest in technology led him to automate financial operations, first with spreadsheets, then Perl, and most recently Python. He founded FinOptimal to help QuickBooks Online-based businesses streamline their financial operations, optimizing value per dollar with outsourced accounting services heavily focused on automation. Jesse has a bachelor's degree from UPENN and Wharton and an MBA from Columbia, and he lives in Houston with his wife and 4 children. Jesse, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Minor correction, my last name is pronounced Rubenfeld. I don't want to get rubbed out. Hope you don't mind.
No problem. Well, I'm glad you shared that with us. And let's talk a little bit about this, because we talked a little bit about cash flow and how important that is. And I talk about it in the profit area, and it's all about the financials of the business that's there. So I think what we've got to do is we've really got to look back a little bit. And one of the questions I would ask you is, how are accountants really evolving from what they've historically done? And what should business owners kind of look at in this change for themselves?
Great question. It's a really exciting time to be an accountant. We're going from a place where we were often largely bean counters, a pejorative term that I took very seriously at the beginning of my career, took it to heart and wanted to change, to being strategic advisors. We're being the eyes and ears of the businesses that we work for, whether they're our employers or our clients. And we're learning how to use technology in ways that we didn't really dream of, before the early 2000s. And it's really changing the game for the profession and for the beneficiaries of the accounting services that we provide. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I think that's the key, and really understanding. I think for business owners, this is one of those that, to be quite honest, for most of them, it's kind of their heartache. It's one that they may not totally understand, but it is so vital in their business to understand their financial picture and understand what's happening. And you talked about it with some accrual and cash basis that's there, but how can we use that really to really help us run our business more efficiently and to allow us to make more profit that we all want?
Great question. I think the answer is, how much profit am I making, right? How are you going to answer that question? So let's say you have a business where you take payment upfront from a customer. Let's say they pay you $100,000 in July. Okay. And that is a prepayment for a year's worth of services that you have to deliver. Okay. So great. Your Chase account just shot up. It looks like you're making money, right? But is that the whole picture? Of course not. Right? How do you evaluate how much money you're making on that $100 each, or that $100,000 each month as you go through it? What is it costing you to deliver whatever they paid you $100,000 for? Figuring out the answer to that is accrual accounting.
Yeah, and it really sets us up, because it truly sets us up so we know what's coming in monthly and what we're using for those. Now, my point is, you talk a lot about automation, and part of your company is really about this automation side of it. So why do you think automation, and especially in the finance area, why does it matter so much, and how can it help us as a small business owner?
That's a great question. I'm an accountant who can code, and we're building a company here of accountants who can code. And what we're trying to do is help accountants automate the processes that used to be, an albatross for us when we did our daily work. So in the example before, if you received $100,000 for a year's worth of service, I've got to spread that over the next 12 months, which used to mean I've got to book 12 journal entries in QuickBooks. I've got to go and key it in. Maybe if I'm really kind of, advanced, I'll create a recurring transaction. But then if things change, I've got to tweak the recurring transaction. Now I just turn on the accruer. I book the $100,000 with, tell FinOptimal, here's the months for this contract. And the entries just get booked. One step, seconds, it's done. Right? So that's an example of a game-changing automation where technology is just saving the accountant a ton of work.
Yeah, that makes a big difference, because the time-wise saves a bunch of time, allows you to put it in your books. You already have it, post it and code it correctly right out the gate. And what does it do? It allows you to start really looking. If you're looking at your financials monthly, you're seeing the true picture versus what you talked about, that full 100,000 sitting up there.
100%. I think it's important what you said about, it's easy for me to get accountant centric, but for the business who's hiring the accountant full-time or on a contract basis, it means better, faster, cheaper accounting. That's where the bottom line really kind of justifies and turns into cash, the use of accrual accounting with automation.
Yeah, and looking at that really makes a change in your business. And for some of our business owners, they've done the same thing for the last 5, 10, 15, whatever that number of years is. And that person that's in that seat may be very comfortably, and maybe they're getting ready to retire. Maybe you need to really improve that area in your business, because now cash is so important. We are in a slowing economy, so we have to look at things. And as you talked about in the very beginning, the cash is the king. And that becomes a really key that for every business to realize that cash that's coming into your business, because it's great to look at your account and there's $100,000 sitting there. But if that's got to last through 12 months, it's not so great if you go out and make a big expense.
Yeah, Gary, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head here. You want your business to grow, and you want your accounting setup to grow with it and not get more expensive, because that at the end of the day is cash out the door that you're paying that accountant. And an accountant can do all of this in QuickBooks. Okay, QuickBooks is great, but if you do it all manually, you either get sloppy because there's so much that you're going to start to make errors, and then that makes you cut corners, or it gets expensive if you really do it in a way that's going to give you that visibility that you need to figure out if you're making money. So automation is really important here.
Well, as we're talking about automations, let's talk about some of those limitations you see with some of the native APIs. And if you would, I don't want to assume anyone, because in accounting, you have a lot of terminology. We all do in our business. So if you would first share us with what APIs are, so we don't assume that everybody knows that. And then what are some of them native APIs that are creating some limitations in the accounting area?
Great question. We focus a lot on APIs, or application programmer interfaces, right? When you and I log on to Gmail, we are using a web interface. We're using a web interface to talk to Gmail. API is our software is talking to the software provider automatically. We're making automated grabs, pushes, and pulls of data. It's sort of a fundamental piece of automation. Okay. And you ask about where, so a lot of third parties that build software products integrate with QuickBooks as an afterthought. I'm thinking here of expense management tools, payroll providers. They don't really care about the account. They're trying to sell payroll services, or they're trying to sell, a charge card. And the accountant really wants to be able to do the books neatly and cleanly. And sometimes the integrations that these third parties build fall short. And because we're accountants who code, we're writing what we consider to be better integrations by accountants for accountants.
Yeah, that makes a big difference, because again, that time saving plus making sure that it goes in correctly. What are some of those flaws that you see kind of with apps that they always tout, and I've seen this too, because we're on QuickBooks, they always say QuickBook integrations. What is that difference there that I should look for?
So some of these third-party sites will pass in way too much data or not enough data, and it just sort of misses the mark. I think payroll services are a good example here. It's often important to be able to see your payroll by person, but the payroll integration will often just book a summary entry for total cash out, total gross pay, total taxes and benefits. And it's not really sufficient. On the other end, you might have a platform where you're passing in every order and you have tons and tons of orders every month. And your QuickBooks is just like inundated with tiny little orders that is not the information you need. Hey, give me a daily summary. Give me a monthly summary, right? You need an accountant to tune how that looks for the business owner, because they know how they want to see it. That make sense?
Oh, that definitely makes sense. And I know that's one of the challenges we had, is we were getting the lump sum. And the problem is when you want to go back and see what is this area, maybe our department's costing you, you're not seeing it then on those numbers. And that becomes where it's so important, is you got to think about the data you want after the fact. When you want to look back, and I want to compare 2022 to what I've spent in 2023 in a certain area or department, you've got to be able to get that versus a lump sum amount that's put in.
Totally, Gary. You start from the end of the story and work backward from there. And your accounting, your QuickBooks needs to be a strategic asset. You don't want to let the data become a liability. I'm mixing accounting metaphors here.
Yeah.
But you get the point, right? You've got to use the data the right way. And our software products try to help you do that. So the end of the story, which is business owner looking at their books to figure out not just how much cash came in or out of their business, but how profitable they were. That's what we're trying to help you figure out.
You're listening to the Small Business Answer Man podcast. We will be right back. And now back to the show. Well, it's so important, because I think the thing is, we don't realize, and what a lot of times happens, we've talked a little bit about that person that's been in that seat is very comfortable doing it the old way. I know a client of mine that I had, and they had the person doing it. And the thing is, they always did things the way they did it 10, 15, 20 years ago. Somebody else came in and created the process became so much quicker because she was using the tools that's available. So my question to you is, in that area, is how can this automation really eliminate 80% of the manual steps. And we know with manual steps becomes mistakes can happen there in our accounting and bookkeeping to make really what we talked about, our books are so much better than, and we're getting the proper information we need.
Great question. Look, data entry is automatable, right? Creating invoices, calculating and recording journal entries. We're experts in automating accounting and business processes, which is why we know what to automate and what not to automate, right? With the accruer, we're trying to automate a process we think a lot of business owners have to deal with. Deferred revenue, my earlier example where you get paid money up front. Prepaid expenses, where you might pay your landlord a lot of money, tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars for a year up front. Or finally, fixed assets. If you buy large machines, if you buy a lot of heavy stuff or make improvements to your office, things that you need to recognize over time, right? Lots of cash out right now, right? But you're not losing money. You just spent a lot of money, but you're not losing money. You're going to use those improvements, those machines, that prepaid rent over the next year. What we're doing is removing all of the work of spreading those large cash flows, whether in or out, over your profit and loss statement for the next 12 months. We're making that go to zero. And you don't have to be an accountant to be able to do it. You just need to know how to type into the QuickBooks description for service between July 1st of this year and June 30th of next year.
Yeah, because it's sitting in the background. But the big thing is it allows us then to be able to set our systems up the way we need them. And that becomes what's so crucial. And I know a lot of business owners are sitting there and they're saying, well, I don't really do this though. So how do I kind of take it the next step? Is there a story or something that you can share of a client that you've worked with, or kind of putting it in their practicality terms? Because I know our business owners, it's not something that they wake up every day to do, but it's the most crucial part of their business, because if they don't have their financials in shape, of course, that can put them out of business.
You know, Gary, I think it's pretty common for small business and even, smallish medium businesses, for their founder or a very senior executive like their COO to be doing their own books despite not being accountants. And QuickBooks has been great at making accounting accessible to those kinds of users. They know they're not doing it perfectly, but it's good enough and they know how they want to see it. So an example I would give is, we work with a translation company, okay? They sell to law firms who need discovery done on languages and documents on different languages, and they buy from a marketplace of freelance translators. And they will often get paid this month, but not pay the translator until 2 or 3 months from now. Multiply that times 50 or 100 translation jobs a month. And if you have a big month, I got a lot of money in this month, but I'm not paying the translators until next month, right? The cash, I can look at my Chase account, but it's a little choppy because it's going up and then it's going out, it's going down a lot next month. How do I figure out am I making money on the margin, right? So that user started using our software, right? And they were able to line up, even though the cash comes in and leaves in different periods. Now they can line it up and see in their profit, oh, wow, I had a great January, a marginal February, an amazing March, a not great April. Here's what I could do differently to improve the months that didn't go well. And then they sort of know that they're missing this nuance. They understand that accrual accounting is important for them to understand, how do I improve my business? But they needed us to help them get over the finish line, and showing them how to use this software is what we did to do that.
Yeah. And it makes a big difference for the bottom line and them being able to see their numbers that they need to see.
If you can't measure it, you can't move it, Gary.
You say that again?
If you can't measure it, you can't move it.
Yeah. And why you've got to measure it so often. And I know for some business owners right now, we're in that third quarter and they still really haven't looked at their numbers. They've looked at some reports and there's cash in the bank and they think everything's okay. But the challenge is you really don't know what's going on. And I would tell you, now's the time to get on top of it before you get in the fourth quarter. Everybody starts thinking about it in fourth quarter because they think, oh, I've got to worry about what's my tax situation is going to be. Well, what are the moves you need to know to do now? And how can you set yourself up for that success?
Totally. Every day in real time, our users can see their numbers because of the way they set it up, right? Even if you don't know where to start, we have resources on our site, FinOptimal.com, that can help walk you through the concepts and teach you how to do it without our products and services. And then that'll sort of help you understand how good it can be with our products and services, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And some great information you've got on the website. Can you share with me, because I think this is so important for them to think about, because number one, for a lot of small businesses, like you said, they're the ones doing it, or like in my case, my wife does. She doesn't have an accounting degree, does very well with numbers and that part of it. How are you doing it differently or better than really what traditional accounting firms are? Because normally you're doing the books and then you're turning it over to accounting firms. How can FinOptimal really help them in that process to their accountant?
It's a great question. I think this gets back to how accounting is changing. First of all, we think it's good that your wife does your books. Your wife's going to know your business a lot better than an accountant you hire for, $100 an hour or whatever it is. So we encourage that. It's just not practical that every small business is going to hire an accountant to do their books for them. Some people will continue to and should do their own books, but we're different because we use accounting automation. That's really where the profession is going. It's about understanding the accrual accounting, but also knowing how to automate the process so that it takes less total time. Traditional firms often still do everything by hand. They're going in and they're booking journal entries one by one, and it just doesn't scale. Even if they say they're tech enabled, a lot of times they're just automating their practice, like their engagement letters, or sending you an automated email once a year to say it's time to fill out the schedule, your tax organizer, right? It's not the same thing as accounting automation, which is really what saves you money by saving us time, the accountant's time, guaranteed. So it's about automation.
Yeah, and that becomes the key. And if you have not got there, it's time. It is 2023. And the thing is, there's so many tools that's available to you. Again, Jesse mentioned on his website, FinOptimal.com is where you can go. Some great information on there that you can get. You can learn a little bit more, kind of tip your toes in the water. But really, what do you need to do to really get your accounting up to 2023 standards? And to make it a more simplified process and truly understanding your financial statements, because you should be able to get a pretty good picture monthly of where you're at. And if it's now third quarter and you've not looked at it, it's time to look at your financial statements.
You said it. Let's look. Go to finoptimal.com, sign up for the accruer, get your books on accrual accounting, or talk to our tech team, talk to our team for a free consultation, and we'll get you on your way.
So some great information there. So please check that out, finoptimal.com. Jesse, before I let you go, and some great information, I appreciate you sharing that and getting business owners to think differently. That's the whole thing I've been trying to do in this third quarter, is getting them to think of how can they make those improvements within their business. And we've had different guests on in each one of those 6 Ps in this financial area that I call, really with the side of it, with the finances, becomes so important because it increases your profit. And that's your bottom line. You work hard every day for that profit. We want the most of that profit that you can get. And I'm telling you, it's better to have profit than not to, because we need small business owners to keep thriving and continuing on in business, because they're the #1 employer in the marketplace. But before I let you go, I want you to share with them, if you would, your best business tip or advice you would share for our business owners.
care about accrual accounting. You don't have to master it yourself. And by the way, Gary, I do our own books. So I don't think it's ever necessary to give it up. You only you know your business best. And we feel that way about our clients. And hopefully a lot of your listeners say, yeah, I can do it myself. Give me a little help with some automation, right? But yeah, sure, I get it. I get why accrual accounting is important. Let me not have to go get my CPA, but I'll use some software that'll help me see if I'm making money every month on the margin. Let's do it. And then cash is king. Cash is king, but accrual accounting is the subject.
That's right. Well, great information. Again, the website's FinOptimal.com. You can connect with Jesse on LinkedIn, Twitter, FinOptimal's on Twitter also. So just check them out. Go to their website, check out that information. Let's improve the financials, because here's my challenge. Always give a challenge or an action. My action is, number one, if you've not looked at your books and you don't have a good number of where you're truly at in your profit in your company, it's time. So in the next 10 days, let's get that figured out. So as we go in the fourth quarter, we can make decisions for our business that we need to. And then let's look at your books, because a lot of you are probably on QuickBooks. How can we use technology to help us improve that with our transactions to be able to give us very better information? And of course, that's why we had Jesse on, is how can we improve those processes? Because processes take time. And the problem is your person that's doing your accounting may be spending more hours than they need to because they're doing it the old-fashioned way, and we're not using technology to save those. And then you wonder why she can't get, or he can't get, other things done. So this becomes the challenge for you. Jesse, thank you again for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Gary.
I'll be back next week with another great guest. Remember, like and share this podcast and let others know about it. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next week. Make it a great day.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.